Hey guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video, we're going through the Port Adelaide versus Adelaide Showdown 56, was it? In which Port Adelaide got a win, keeping their top four, well, their top two hopes, that double chance home finals, a real red hot crack, as it'll all come down to that final game of the season. That Sunday is looking very, very juicy, to be honest. You've got the three top 8 sides that are really competing for that top 8 or that 6, 7, 8 role. You've got them playing, plus you have the second and third teams effectively playing, and it looks very likely that that could shake up that top 4 race, as well as obviously I think that Geelong are going to win next week against West Coast, which will confirm the top 4 teams. But whether Geelong win big enough, if they win by like 100 points, then it puts the pressure on Port Adelaide and GWS. I think that GWS wins, so which could cause Western Bulldogs to knock out of the race. Like this win alongside some of the other wins this weekend sets up a very entertaining last round of the season, as I guess the seedings are decided, and they're all decided basically on that Sunday games. All 3 of them are going to be very interesting. But anyway, let's just jump into this video here. Zach Butters, I remember a couple of weeks ago against, was it Sydney or something? Or that Zach Butters, we should trade him out because he's facing a really hard midfield, etc., etc. And he's gone 128, 108, 143. That's 236. 379, which is an average of 126 or something like that. Sounds about right. And yeah, he just dominated this game. Had a 48-point last quarter. Ended up with 42, 4 and 5, as well as a 1 goal 2. The 1 goal 2 honestly pretty much cancels out the free kick differential, because he's one that definitely does get a lot of free kicks, but give away a lot of free kicks. So ended up with 4 free kicks, 4-3 against. But yeah, absolutely dominant game from him. He's been one of the best, one of the more intriguing ones to hold, as there's definitely been booms and busts with him. But even at whatever he's going to average, I do think that Rosie will be the one that you start next year, just because I think he's one that holds the ultimate power, as in value, I should say. Not power, ultimate value over Butters. But Butters is one that can just absolutely chunk it up. 105. So Butters might just be the primo that you just start with anyway, even though that probably is reserved for like Bontempelli and stuff like that, who can really as well do it. So you're probably going to have one of those primos that is in that 105 to 110 region that you're like, I want to start this guy. And Butters could just be that guy. Has had a really good bad game against GWS, and also had a really poor game. Well, he hasn't really against Carlton. So he's had 2 poor tag games. So that could be an interesting watch there, especially if these guys have, who has the early game as well, the opening round. Could be very interesting for fancy prospects. Wines 113, had a huge last quarter of 55, ended up with 26, 6 and 8. He is a non-disposal merchant. Connor Rosie ended up with 28, 4 and 5, and yeah, just did really well, pretty much. A 109 from him is absolutely huge, and I think he's one that's just going to be valued just because of this stretch here that he had this month or whatever, month and a half that he had, where he dropped so much in value because he had a 94, 96, a 166 through 3 games. He effectively lost roughly around 150 points, which in the grand scheme of things for however many games he's played, I think he's at around, how many games has he missed? Because it would be 22. So 1, 2, 3. He missed 3, so he's at 19 games. 150 divided by 19 and divide that by 20 is 7.5 points, just because of directly injuries. If you take him at 100, and I think he's even more than that. So he is 7 or 8 points of unders because of that chaos there. As well as having, I think even this Collingwood game as well, he might have had. I don't remember. I think this was also injury affected here as well. So he's potentially 8, 9, 10 points unders of value. So that's why I say that he might be one that is in the value scheme, and Butters might be the one primo that you go, he's going to stay up the top end of primo status for the whole year. Horn Francis, I think he's one that's He's going to be annoying because he's not going to be fancy relevant, but he's going to put up big scores like this and go on runs like this, just because it's much similar to Chad Warner and some other players there that they are just very much impact players, and they can have poor games where they have like, I think he might have had like 5 free kicks against in this Gold Coast game, had like 14 and a goal or something. I just want to double check that. But yeah, I just don't think that he is one that will be too fancy relevant, just because I think he can impact the game in other ways, as well as not being necessarily their main midfielder. Like for Isaac Heaney's sake, at least, he's more so like the up there with like Butters and Rosie in ball finding, whereas Horne-Francis is much similar to Chad Warner, and we've had patches where Chad Warner looks great, but then patches where he looks absolutely horrendous. That Gold Coast game, he ended up with 9 touches, 5 tackles, 4 free kicks against, and 2 goals. So he was still, as I just dropped my phone on the ground there, he was really impactful in that game, but he still ended up with only 9 touches and 2 goals. So he really didn't have a fancy relevance in the game, but he had a really good actual game in general. Willem Drew, Burgoyne, Houston as well. He's going to be out for, I think it'll be 5. I think AFL's pushing for 5, plus I think they'll get 5, just with the differential between the Parker and Charlie Dixon, Isaac Rankin hits. I think that, this one, due to the injury level, I think will be stand at 5 weeks. Which could put him in doubt for next year, which would put his fancy relevance pretty much off if it is 5 weeks and he misses opening round or 2, as you basically won't probably be looking at him till week probably 8, 9, 10 at least. And that would be basically because he has the good bye round, etc., because by that time you're looking at the byes. Bergman, Dixon, Farrell, Burne-Jones, Rioli, Zerk Thatcher. There is no one here that I'm actually really looking at and going, I want this guy, or even next year, to be honest with you, at all, just because a lot of these guys are small forwards or key defenders down here, and that's not what we look for. Jordan Dawson, 132, who was absolutely huge. He could be a guy next year that honestly explodes if they get the midfield mix right, but I doubt that they do, because they have no clue, honestly. They have no clue what's going on at Adelaide. And yeah, he's had a couple of poor games, but he's one of the guys that is able to just get those non-disposal points. 11 tackles, 6 marks. That's absolutely huge. Crouch, 114, 29, 3 and 8. He just isn't impactful on the actual game, which is the big problem for Adelaide, especially when you add Berry and Laird in there. They really need a midfield of Saligo, Dawson, and honestly, someone else. Just get someone that's quick in there, because this slow-moving ball movement. Just look at Port Adelaide's midfield compared to them. Let's look at the... does this have clearances or anything? I should probably actually grab my phone and look up the clearances stats for that game, because I wouldn't be surprised if Adelaide won the hit-outs. Did they? No, Port Adelaide actually won the hit-outs 56-43, so I was actually surprised that Rowan Marshall, for all that he was talked about, got dominated in the ruck. It sounds like Sweet actually got the more hit-outs. But if you look at the... where are the clearances? Clearances were 52-38. And I'm pretty sure if you go back to Adelaide last week... where are they? Adelaide against Western Bulldogs last week. They had... Where is it? Here. They had 59 hit-outs to 22 against the Western Bulldogs last week, but lost the clearances. That is just absolutely horrific that they lost the clearances with a plus 37 hit-out advantage, which just shows to you that their midfield isn't working, and that's the problem with it. They're way too slow, and that's just the way the modern game is moving towards. It is moving towards these really line-breaking midfielders, much to the like of Horne-Francis, Rosie, and Butters all encapsulate that, whereas I don't really see anyone encapsulating that for Adelaide. No one else here really, I could say, is fancy relevant next year, to be honest with you. No, I don't really think you're fancy relevant. Curtin, Curtin's probably the only guy, and that's just because he's had 2 sub games, as well as another really bad scoring game here. So he's currently priced at, if I just quickly run this up, I believe it will be about 30 or so. Curtin is priced at 29.3 through 6 games. Say he gets another 47, that's not out of the question. 6 times 29.3 is 176 plus 40 what did I say? It was 176 plus 47. Divide that by 7. He'd be priced at 31, and then he'd have a 9% discount. That would price him at 29 or so, which is like exactly what he was priced at the start of the year. I think he was priced at like 267, and his price would be priced at 262 next year. If he's priced at 262, well, he's just going to be massive value, as I think he finally gets his way. And if they finally figure out that he's not a key defender and he's actually a running defender, much to the similarities of I know he's a little bit more built than a Nick Blakey, but he could easily be your fourth defender, that he plays taller. Well, he's taller than he actually plays, I should say. He's more of a smaller defender. So yeah, I just think that he's a lot better in that role, and potentially even in the midfield. He could be a circuit breaker in that midfield. I just think that they're not playing him in the right position. Rochelle had his funny moments, but they lost in the end, so he gets a lot of grief because of that. Rankin concussed, which will be interesting next year, just because of fancy relevance now that he's had two really poor games, a 45 and a 47. Alongside, was that an injured 74? No, that was a suspended 74. He's also had injured games as well. So he's going to be priced, I don't know exactly, around about that 80 mark, I would suspect. And if they do play him in the midfield, he definitely has some fancy relevance then. Bond is just playing sort of a tagging role, it seems like, from what I've heard. Murray, Fogarty, Gallant, and then Zach Taylor's going to be an interesting one next year, given that he's now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games, 44 average. That's around that 308 marker plus a 16. 324 through 8 games is roughly around 40. You're not going to pick him up at 40 because that's around 360k. So you really have to have a really poor game in the last round to get that average down, much towards that sort of, if he can get it around that 37 marker or so with like another 16, and then have that discount towards that sort of 35 marker, then that starts to make him more fancy relevant, I would think, as 35 times the magic number is 315, 316. I think that's a lot more fancy relevant than around about that 360, 370 marker. But anyway, that is the video there going through the Showdown 56, I think it was, and Butters just absolutely dominated. So glad that I held the trade there and did some other things. But I mean, I stuffed up my trade this week, but I mean, there wasn't anyone good to actually trade in, so it didn't really matter in the end. But anyway, that is the video, and I'll see you guys in the next recap. Bye, guys.